Hey everybody, let's talk about piecewise functions, okay? Um, so let's see yeah, it's a nice color, I guess. All right, so we've got the statement here. We have a function right here, and a piecewise function means that the function comes in pieces. This one comes in four pieces. I think the ones in the homework are typically two piecers, bikini functions, but this one comes in four pieces. Um, and why is that? Because I know it looks really weird. Well, let's see if we can understand what's going on here. So this says that we have a function called p or f of w, and let's see, the function represents the relationship between price of a package to be shipped and its weight, such that p or f of w is the price. Okay, P for price, that makes sense. And W is the weight. What a surprise. Okay, so the price is $7.99 when the weight is between, let's see, W is measured in pounds, when the weight is between 0 and 1 pounds. Okay, now I just kind of made all these numbers up, so, and even if I didn't, I'm sure they're outdated by now because I'm not going to make a new video every term. So that's how that works. The price is $8.44 when the weight is between 1 and 2 pounds. And then notice if the weight is exactly 1 pound, well, that's not here, that's here because it has the or equal sign right there. Okay, I'm not going to make a big deal out of that, but it is part of the exercise, part of the function. Um, and so on and so forth. So if I said, "Hey, what is f of I don't know, 3.5?" Okay. Well, the 3.5 takes the place of the w, the weight. So this says, "Hey, when the weight is 3.5 pounds, what's the price?" Let's see. Is 3.5 pounds in that interval, in that domain? No. Is 3.5 in that one? No. Is 3.5 in that one? No. Is 3.5 in that one? Yes. So it pertains to this one here, which means that's going to be our y value, our price. So then we would say $9.14. Okay. That's how it works. So just like always, you plug in an x or an independent variable value. In this case, we're calling it w, but it's basically just x. You plug in an x, and then once you know what your x value is, then you go down here and say, all right, which one, you know, which of these different pieces of the function am I going to use? And then whichever one it is, like let's say maybe it's that one, then you say, oh, then that must be the function I'm going to use. Now, it's not always just a number here. Sometimes it'll actually, well, in the homework, it's usually going to be an actual something with a variable. Okay, like 2w minus 1 and w squared or whatever. Um, that is kind of how this thing works. All right, so let's talk about more stuff. Um, I kind of hinted at, well, yeah, I kind of hinted at the domain. So we can talk about the domain and the range of this function, just like we can for any other function. Domain for piecewise is easy. You just look at right here, these conditions, these domains. That is the domain. And it says, okay, everything from 0 to 1, and then 1 to 2, and then 2 to 3, and then 3 to 4. Those are my x values or w values, my weight values. So basically, everything from 0 to 4. And you can write it in inequality notation, or you can write it in interval notation, like that. And nothing from 0 to 4 gets skipped. Okay, it's not like, well, we're skipping 2 pounds. Like, no, 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 it's covered right there. Okay, because it has the or equal next to the two. So domain is not too bad for piecewise functions because it's always just given to you. What about the range? Okay, now the range we got to think about that just a little bit, and I think the easiest way to do it is to look at the graph. Okay. If you look at the graph, what y values are being used? For example, is 7.5 pounds, or I'm sorry, $7.50 being used? No. How about 8.50, $8.50? Is that being used? No. Pretty close. But um, oops, okay. But $9.14 is being used. I know that because it says so right here. Okay, that y value is being used. Okay, again, these are our x's, these are our y's. Um, and I know that $7.99 is being used right there. Not $8, but $7.99. I know, it's a big difference. And 8.44 is being used and 8.85 is being used. Okay. And I can see that on the picture. So sometimes, sometimes depending on what kind of piecewise function you're dealing with, it might look something like this, and maybe something like that, and then you would say, it looks like our range, the y values being used, are everything from this y value here, which looks, I'll just say it's about $8.65. Everything from 8.65 on down. So all y values that are less than or equal to 865, or p values, whatever. But also all the y values here from looks like about $9.15 on up. So all y values that are greater than 9.15. I didn't put the or equal sign because I got this open circle, so we're not including the height of $9.15. Now, the um, where did I come up with the 915 to the 865? I'm just estimating, just looking at the graph. It's not like I calculated anything to get that. But if that were the graph, that would be how you get the domain. Okay. Um, let's see. So on this one, so normally your domain is going to be like an interval. Okay, all y values greater than 4 or something. But in this case, our domain is just individual numbers. Okay, so we can just say y or p or f of w, whichever one you prefer. They all represent the same thing in this context, in this problem. You could just say, well, the y values that are being used are 7.99 and 8.44 and 8.85 and 9.14. Those are the only ones. The stuff in between them, no, we're not including it. So we don't want to do an interval because the interval would say, oh yeah, everything from here to here or from here to here is being used. And that's not the case. Okay. Um, so that would be one way of writing the range. I think that's the easiest way on this problem. So that's why I'm doing it. Okay, what about okay, so I've talked about the graph and the table just a little. Notice when you plug in a number like 0.76 pounds, you plug it in for W. Okay, we'd say, well, 0.76 is our W value. That's between 0 and 1. So that's why the Y value that goes with it is 7.99. Okay. Um, So just kind of showing that again. But we can also represent that on the graph. Notice right here, this point right here is 0.76 for the x or weight value, and 7.99 for the y or price value. Okay, so that point means, hey, if you have a 0.76 pound package, it's going to cost $7.99 to ship. That's what this point means. That's what this ordered pair means. Okay. Anyway, um, and that is basically how piecewise functions work. And that last little bit relating the graph and the table, that's how all functions work. So, all right, I'm going to get going. It's Independence Day and I want to party.